Welcome to the Mark Attwood Show, Adventures in a Cosmic Suit. Today we're going to talk about anxiety. One of the things this pandemic has done is cause anxiety levels to go through the roof. And myself, this is one of the reasons why I did the Maximize the Light in Your Cosmic Suit course with Jeremy Ayres, because Jeremy could see last December that I was burning out and running on adrenaline. And I think a lot of us have been running on adrenaline, reaching for the wine bottles, the fags, the cigarettes. For those in the States, sorry, we call them fags in the UK, but cigarettes. And generally our health has gone downhill. So I'm going to pull in Manda, who's an expert in anxiety. Hello, Manda. How are you?
Hello, Mark. I love that introduction. It made me partly angry, and it was hilarious. Yes.
It is actually great. I've been liberated, but less people are going to see it. So, oh well.
Oh, well. Yeah, and when we focus on that, we do get angry, don't we? It's like, why are we being so suppressed? And then you've got these idiots saying, you're not being censored. What are you talking about? And you know, all those conversations that happen.
Well, people not see it. The people surely, they, you know, even on Facebook, people know that things are being censored. How do they not know? I mean, I've been locked out of Facebook for 3 months. That's been very liberating as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When you see that Facebook censored the BMJ, you just think, just stop it already.
Well, it's actually good getting off these things, and I think they're all going to be closed down soon. So it's just a period of time. Somebody said to me today, somebody said, why are you even on YouTube? And I was like, well, because I'm pragmatic, and that's where the traffic is, and I've tried to leverage the YouTube traffic to get more of the message out, but you know, interference. I've been closed out of Facebook. I've had a PayPal account closed, linktree closed, and you know, they're literally. And this is take 2 of this interview because of interruptions. I've had interruptions all day, demonic attacks last night. You know what? Fuck it. We're winning this war. Doesn't matter. But anxiety. I think a lot of people don't realize they're in anxiety until they're through it, or something breaks down, right? Because I'm just going to share a quick story with you. When I was about 29, 30 years old, I remember waking up at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So my heart was going fast. I was sweating, and I was having this nightmare about getting onto a passenger plane on a flight to Spain. Right. And I was like, what? I'm a pilot. Why am I having anxiety about getting on a plane? And it was real anxiety. It was the first time I experienced an anxiety attack, and I couldn't, you know, looking back on it, I can't even remember what triggered it. But it's a very, very serious problem that a lot of people have, and has obviously gone through the roof. You know, just even yesterday, I was doing a Q&A with the Maximize the Light course with Jeremy, and listening to people on there talking about how they've coped or tried to cope with the pandemic has often meant, you know, reaching for bottles of wine and eating bad food, and you know, just and myself, I completely stopped exercising for 2 years because I've just been sat at this computer. What have you noticed? Because you've helped thousands of people over 25 years solving anxiety. What have you noticed yourself personally with the changes recently?
Well, like you say, it's always been there, hasn't it? You know, anxiety was there 25 years ago, without doubt. But there have been changes in our lives which people weren't anticipating, which have really impacted people on really strange levels, I suppose. And one of them is that people don't know the rules anymore. You know, you can be walking around, can't you, in a supermarket, and people are jumping out of your way, and it's like, oh, have I done something wrong? And there's all that kind of strange tension that's just spread through really banal things like picking up a pack of loo roll. It's not normal, is it? We've all had to adapt, and we know from all the research that goes on in therapy, in the therapy psychological world, that one of the main drivers behind anxiety is a lack of tolerance for uncertainty. So if we take that as a bit of a fact, you know, how uncertain have things been lately? Every 5 minutes, something else is popping up, isn't it? And if we think of, I mean, I didn't watch any of that media over the last 2 years. I did not watch those people in front of their stupid podiums with their stupid little signs saying, I didn't watch a moment of it. But the vast majority of my clients did. And I was listening to people in my sessions saying, oh, but it's really dangerous out there, and I'm really scared now because someone touched my dog when I was out walking the dog, and now I'm terrified that the dog's carrying something. So it got really extreme. You know, they'd never, you know, they used to walk the dog and get that kind of rejuvenation. Now all of a sudden walking the dog has become something that has made them very, very panicky. So I think our baselines of stress have gone right up. And they do say that it takes 4 days from a hit of the adrenaline for it to really come down back to base. But of course, during that time, if it pops up again, you know, you're up, you know, up here somewhere.
Like they're prodding all the just prod, keep it up, keep it up, keep it up.
Yeah. Yes, it's been really difficult for people, and those people who've suffered in the past with things like social anxiety or things like OCD or health anxiety. I mean, those are the three main categories of anxiety where people have really, you know, they've been turned on their heads, really. But 10 years ago, I used to see people who had anxiety, OCD, and in our team, they would say, too serious, too severe for us, let's send them up to the next level of treatment. And these would be people who'd be washing their shopping. These would be people who'd be washing their hands several times a day. I used to look at their hands in front of me and think, whoa, they're just so beaten up, you know, they're all scratched. And if anyone's going to catch something through their hands, it's going to be you, because they're all messed up from all the stuff that you use on them.
So all that stuff actually breaks down your defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop you from catching anything. It makes you more likely to catch something, but you can't catch a virus. So what are they worried about?
Well, it doesn't make any sense, does it? Because if you're anxious about catching something that's airborne, keeping your hands clean isn't going to make a difference. But that's what's happened, really, that's changed things in the field that I work in. 10 years ago, things that were seen to be very unusual and very severe and passed up to the next level of care are now 10 a penny. They're everywhere. And the sort of models of treatment that we're encouraged to use with them don't always hit the mark. I mean, how can you tell somebody it's okay, this isn't a threat, or let's look at the real threat here, when you've got people on the TV telling them all the time it is a massive threat?
Oh, that hadn't crossed my mind, because you can't, of course, you can't say, well, you can't catch a virus and viruses are created from overtoxicity and the TV is bad for you and the EMFs are bad for you, because they won't listen to you.
No.
Wow. So how do you cope with that?
It's been really difficult. It's been difficult for everybody. I think that the levels of sickness and stress within the health-giving communities has gone downhill. These, you know, coping mechanisms that you were describing earlier. I mean, I've started my exercise again, but I did the same as you. 2 years sat in front of the computer, doing my Zoom calls and stuff. 2 years thinking that having a bottle of wine a night would be a good idea. Not every night, but, you know, that did happen. And those are the sorts of coping strategies that most of my clients were using as well. And they didn't have their normal kind of networks, you know. All of a sudden, I know we're a bit more used to it now, and we've got our Zoom networks and we kind of like them, and they're perhaps better than the people we've discarded. And we've also got some of the social life back again because things are open. But there was a time when stuff was shut down, wasn't there? Like massively shut down. And so all the normal coping mechanisms, I'd speak to some of the junior members of staff and they'd be saying, you know, I've got 15 people to talk to today, and I'm so overwhelmed myself, and I can't even see my mum, and she's the one who normally helps me. And the, you know, junior members of staff really struggling. So it felt like it was catastrophic for the entire system of mental and psychological emotional health care. And you had really great psychologists like Emma Kenny talking about it and speaking up. And I was really pleased with that woman when she was doing that, quite near the beginning as well.
Well, I actually met a nurse yesterday and I was like, whoa, how have you been? And she said, well, I did the first lockdown, and then when the second one came, I was like, I'm not doing that again. So she took leave. And I was like, well, I'm not surprised, because the stress, I mean, whatever one thinks of the health staff that have gone along with this fake pandemic, the ones that it's still bloody stressful what they've had to go through, you know. And I do feel bad for them, because, you know, there's just, well, apart from the ones who were doing the dancing on TikTok, they can go fuck themselves. But the rest of them, I do have compassion for that.
Me too. And,
you know, even though I knew all this was coming, when it came, I was extremely stressed because I was worried about my kids. And what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And it's, even though I knew who the bad guys were, I knew what their plan was, which is a blessing and a curse, because and the blessing is, you know what's happening. The curse is, are they going to pull it off? You know, and do I want to live in that world? And no, the answer is no. So, you know, just talk about it. But so the coping, this is really interesting. So the majority of the people that you've had to work with in the last couple of years, you can't actually tell them what the cause of their anxiety is. All you can do is give them coping strategies that have worked in the past that would help them, right?
Yeah, and they'd have to be pretty adapted, because if the old coping strategy was to expose yourself to 3 social situations this week, to practice, you know, and grade it. So the first one you do this, the next one you do this, those things were kind of gone. So you had to be really creative and flexible. So it's been really hard for the helpers to help people. And of course, that's had the knock-on effects with everybody's mental health. So I think this anxiety pandemic that we're actually in is so huge. It's absolutely massive. And as I said to you at the beginning, I think I said this, anxiety is based on a lack of tolerance to uncertainty. And when you've got a problem with tolerating uncertainty, you've got 2 options. One would be to increase your tolerance to that uncertainty. The other would be to increase your certainty. And of course, that's what people with anxiety have always done. You know, if I make my world this small, if I make sure I always do this in this routine, if I make sure I always check the door 5 times before I leave the house, then I can be more certain that things are going to be safe. So they've always done things to increase certainty just to cope. And that's you know, really base level. I mean, God knows where they are actually, but base level stress coping. Dump on what's happened and the way that it was presented to them, because you could argue that if there's a terrible disease out there that is really harmful, then that's one thing, but actually it was the psychological input from the televisions that was making things worse. So dump all that on, and people have all of a sudden they can't. How can they be certain? They can't find even the tiniest sliver of certainty in their lives, and they don't know where to go with that, because that's their whole strategy. Try and make things more certain. Try and make things more certain, and then anxiety becomes panic because it just gets too overwhelming. And at some point, the body goes, "Do you know what? I must be in a massive crisis here. There must be a huge threat coming at me, because why else is my body going through this?"
And there are physical consequences to this mental torture, right?
Yeah.
Now I know about a few. You know all of them, I'm sure. Like adrenal fatigue is a big one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Heart attacks.
All of it.
Yeah,
High blood pressure.
High blood pressure. I mean, the state of health of the world right now must be possibly in the worst it's ever been in history.
I think so. I think it would be shocking if we could actually, you know, dig into that a bit, because cortisol is, I think, one of the most damaging hormones. It's similar to adrenaline, except that cortisol lasts in the system much longer, and that's, you know, a massive immune suppressor. So yeah, anxiety has that direct link to the immune system.
Well, I suffered from cortisol overload about 12 years ago, and I got really overweight, and it's a kind of fight or flight hormone, isn't it? It's the thing that your body creates because it's ready, you know, it doesn't know what's going on, and ready to run 100 yards, but then you don't, so you're not burning it up properly.
Exactly, you're not processing it.
Yeah, that's really bad for the heart and everything else, which is why I ended up in front of the heart surgeon. But I'm still here, so there is hope. There are ways of getting over anxiety. Well, what have you found? Have you had, obviously you're aware, you know what's going on in the world. So to this audience, you can talk freely. What's well, to most of them anyway. Always a few. So what? I mean, I think pretty much everybody watching this channel will understand what we're talking about and will be suffering with anxiety. What's the best thing that people can do practically, like today?
Well, do you know what I think is the key? There's a lot of things. There's probably half a dozen really important things. But one thing I think that if people could wrap their heads around that would really help would be a dose of self-compassion. Now, I'm hearing people talk about this all the time. It almost doesn't matter what I tune into these days, because obviously I tune into the good stuff and not what's on the TV. But people are talking about self-compassion, and it is so important. And without that, you're kind of scuppered. You absolutely need it, because what the tendency is for when people get themselves into this kind of a cycle, this kind of state, the tendency is that they just berate themselves. They're just like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I'm doing this. Haven't I learned this? And oh my God, this is now my 6th bottle of wine this week. You know, they'll just be hard and mean to themselves. And we all know on the surface level, well, that's not very good. That's not going to make you feel good. That's not going to help. Everyone knows that. But what they haven't actually thought through is that there's another layer to it. And that is that if you are telling yourself that what you're doing is stupid and how you are coping is wrong, your threat system in the, you know, the system that's trying to make sure you live goes, you're stupid. Oh my God, that's really dangerous. You better have another big dose of adrenaline because this is life-threatening stuff. So it's really insidious in that way. Does that make sense, what I've just said?
Well, it does, because as you were saying it, I was thinking, you know, I was like, guilty. I tried to check myself.
Yeah.
You know, I really, you know, I teach people about positive thinking, but, you know, it happens to all of us. And you know, I'd be going, oh, what? I'm an idiot. Oh, what an idiot. Oh, why did I do that? Why did I say that? And it's like, yeah, you really got to watch that. Self-compassion is not my strong point, but I'm working on it.
It's really important, Mark, not just for the obvious reasons, but because you are telling your body there's a threat if you're being mean to yourself. And if you're trying, I mean, most of the people who are interested in the material that I produce are trying to lower their anxiety. I mean, perhaps that's not, probably yesterday with YouTube and whatever, it may not be such a big deal for you. Yours might be more about those negative messages. We all do the negative self-talk. It's massive, absolutely massive. And we all know that we should be more self-compassionate. But I think when you start to realize that not being self-compassionate is just giving your threat system a green light to just kick in, go for it. I'm a stupid person, therefore I'm literally about to be, you know, doing something dangerous that will probably kill me, so you better step in and give me some adrenaline. That's what you're basically saying. And hence all the adrenal fatigue and cortisol overload that people get into. It's a real scourge, the self-compassion. And people don't think, oh, I'm anxious, the fix must be self-compassion, because it doesn't sort of seem to add up. But I suppose perhaps the bit that I haven't said that might be the missing key for people listening is that our bodies do not know the difference between an external genuine threat of some sort of massive woolly mammoth lumbering towards me from the distance, getting closer, huge, it's going to absolutely squash me to pieces. They don't know the difference internally between that external trigger and thinking a horrible thought like, I could get squashed by a woolly mammoth. You know, people are into manifesting, and I know lots of people are, and, you know, there's lots of stuff out there about that, particularly at the moment, are starting to see that. But it's a biological fact that your subconscious mind doesn't know, you know, is basically a yes man. So whatever you feed it, it will go, yes, that's true. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so, well, it's like saying, you know, don't think about pink elephants. And then your mind cannot process a negative or positive. It has to process what it's given.
Precisely.
Yeah, precisely. Which is the key to manifesting as well. Yeah, I do have this conversation on a regular basis with a lot of people that I deal with. But I've also, so adrenal fatigue was a major problem for me, apart from the cortisol. But I'm seeing a lot of people behaving outside of their, well, being horrible basically, when they're not normally horrible people, or they're doing horrible things, and that's been like, wow, this is distress. This is you know, I've got the demonic aspect to this, but you know, I'm talking about like how it manifests in the body as stress and being unhappy and overweight and depressed, and then getting agoraphobic and you know, not going out and not meeting people. That's the real tragedy of this, because we're social animals, aren't we?
Oh, completely. We're social animals. We need our social contacts to thrive. That was one of the hardest things about the lockdown for me. I mean, I've got 3 children, currently sort of 15, 20 and 25. 25-year-old one, she was fine because she had furlough from work. And as you know, most people love that because they got to have a little holiday free. And she's living in a flat with a bunch of people her own age, great times. The 15-year-old back then, of course, he was 13. So he was at that sort of pre-socializing stage, really. So he was more or less okay. It started to get to him towards the end. But the one in the middle, who was then 18, oh my goodness, it was torture for that age group, I think they've had the most hellish time of all of the age groups. I know it's been hard for so many, the elderly and everyone in between. The little children who haven't been able to, sort of learn facial language because of their, their masks and stuff on all the other people. But that 16 to 18, 19 age group, it broke my heart seeing them. And they'd be doing their little sort of socially distanced meetups, walking down by the river, etc. And they'd have people taking photos of them and putting it on Facebook saying, these young people clearly don't live in the same household. And other people arguing, saying, well, they might do. How do you know? Well, they certainly don't, because they're in the sort of 17-year age, and they definitely don't live alone. They're not students living in student houses with each other, and all of that going on, and the sort of persecution. And that's the level of stress that people were under. And like you say, it makes people turn on other people. It makes them do. They're so scared that they do things that they wouldn't normally perhaps do, like naming and shaming. I was livid. I can't even tell you.
Well, that I remember in 1984 when I think it's the neighbour's kid tells on Winston, and I just remember reading that, being horrified, because when I was a kid, literally the back door was always open. Neighbours would just walk in, have a cup of tea. We would, people talking over the fence. That's how people got along. That's how society works, and they're just taking it all away. Yeah. But what else practically can people do? I mean, I think one of the things I struggled with is breathing, for example. I'm a shallow. I tried to breathe deeply, but I do. I think I'm especially Celtic blood. We suffer from generational trauma, which means we're shallow breathers. I'm taking.
I do that too. I naturally fall into that, and you have to check yourself. I think again, I'm all about a little bit all about the theory. So I'll answer your question, but I'll do it with a bit of theory, because I've done tons of training. I mean, apart from things like mechanical engineering, there's probably nothing that I haven't trained in. I've done so much; it's crazy. I've always loved to learn. So I came to cognitive behavioral therapy as part of my therapy journey, but that's not to say I'm an exclusively cognitive behavioral therapist. And cognitive behavioral therapy does get a bad rap, and I can see why, because people assume it's too much on the surface, it's too much, shoving protocols down people's throats, really. But actually, I really like elements of it, because think about this: if I say to you, think of a pink flamingo, you can do that. Right now you can do that. We've already sort of looked at that. If I say to you, give me a little wave, you can do that. That's the cognitive and the behavior. Those are the thoughts, thank you very much, and behavior. You're doing both of those things. But if I say to you, can you conjure up the emotion of guilt? Can you conjure up the emotion of jealousy, hatred, emotions? They're harder to genuinely do in that same simple, right, straight out the bag, done it. And the same with a bodily response. If I say to you, bring on a panicky feeling, it's much harder to do than those two things. So I love the fact that cognitive behaviour therapy focuses on the two elements that we can most easily change by implementing things, simple things. And then what it does is it spreads into the emotional and physiological stuff. So it spreads into the breathing habits, and it spreads into the emotional patterns. Because what people come to therapy for is because they want to feel better. You always get that, and of course that's not a good enough goal for me, but as a start, that's what people always say. So they want an emotional and physical change, but we do it through the thoughts and the behaviours. So as to the breathing, hopefully that made sense, that little bit of praising cognitive behavioural therapy, because it does get a bad rap, and it's a shame, because if you've got an experienced and well-rounded CBT therapist, you've got someone who can sort of stand by your side. And you're talking about your maximising lot in that group yesterday. I think one of the main problems people have with any kind of self-improvement, I'm talking from a psychological perspective, though it might be the same as what Jeremy experiences, I don't know, but is that there's kind of no faith in it, or there's not a roadmap. And I think we all need someone who can be there with us and to say, I know that you're in the dark at the moment, and I know it feels really shit at the moment, but actually there is a map to get out of this. And if you can just bear with me on it and come along with me on it, we are going to get to the other side of this. And I think that so often when people are trying to do things on their own, even things like the breathing stuff that you're saying, it's so easy to take 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps forward. but then when you fall back, it feels like you've just gone down an enormous sinkhole. So there's something about that framework that is fantastic. And it's what I have been thrilled to offer people. Literally, you know, I love people. I love listening to people. I listen to hours of people on YouTube, as you can imagine. I won't listen to you on YouTube anymore, but everyone else, love it. I'll listen to tons, and I love to listen to people and love their stories. And that's why I've stuck with being a therapist, even though I'm a commitment phobe. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant to say to somebody, here's a map. Yes, breathe nice and calmly. Oh, and they're like, oh my God, that just sounds like a load of hippie nonsense, tree hugging rubbish. Breathe. Everyone says that. That's not, very helpful. But actually think about it. In that moment of immense anxiety with the wildebeest rampaging towards you, do you ever go, wildebeest in the distance, let me just breathe? No, you don't. So what you're doing when you do that breathing is that you are sinking it into the system, and you're saying to the body, we really are safe here. This is okay. So being given a framework as to why you're doing what you're doing, and the faith that someone else has got that you're going to get to the other end, I think is what's most helpful. So yes, breathing. It's so important, because if you're going to breathe in a shallow way, in an anxious way, your body's going to get the message loud and clear that you are in danger. There's no question about it. But we do it all the time, don't we? Like you said, it's so hard to get out of. Have I answered your question, or have I just waffled on? I don't know.
No, it's good. I was just thinking about, like, that's why simple advice like go for a walk in the morning, right? Just go out and walk in nature. Certainly ground yourself. Get a grounding bed sheet, walk out barefoot on the grass. These things really do work. In fact, as you were talking, I was thinking, actually, my channel has been all about this all along, and I didn't realize.
Really? Wow.
But,
we know the walking thing. It is, as you said, so valuable, because you're doing it on that level, and also it's the nature thing. But also, you've probably not heard of this woman called Francine Shapiro, but she invented a therapy called EMDR. You may have heard of that, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Big mouthful, but it basically heals trauma. Now, I've worked with people with huge traumas, military trauma, childhood, you name it, I've worked with it, even the SRA vile stuff. And basically, that therapy works by having sort of bilateral stimulation. So you sort of, the therapist is with you, gets you to think about the stuff in a certain way, in a certain routine. And as you're doing that, you're either moving your eyes left to right really quickly. Hope you kind of can see my eyes doing, it's like that sort of stuff. Probably looking insane. Or you can have like little things that are patting you in the hand to give you bilateral. So you're basically stimulating both sides of the brain. And that's what walking does. And she discovered it when she was out walking. She just got a cancer diagnosis, walked through some trees that were quite weird with the way that they had the light. So her eyes would naturally go left to right to avoid the sunlight sort of glaring. And she came to the end of the walk going, how can I feel so good when I've just had a cancer diagnosis? And that's when, and that was in the 80s. And she started her research from there. Amazing woman, amazing research. I can't tell you the hundreds of thousands of people EMDR has healed with trauma because of her discovery.
That's interesting. That reminds me of the Bates method for improving your eyesight, which I did.
Yeah.
I did about 15 years ago, and I staved off for a good 15 years. And a lot of that was like moving your eyes, because when we're staring at a screen, we're just like straight ahead. When we're working, we tend to be stuck in these situations. And it's just about movement and getting out. And that's the simple start to it. And then remembering to breathe, meditate, and all these things. But I wanted to talk about it again, because these things just need to be reinforced in people, because people just are frozen like rabbits in headlights at the moment. And it's like, the fear is all up here,
Oh yeah, 100%. What I've noticed lately is there's a message coming out to those of us who are listening, which is very much about trust yourself, go within. Trust yourself, go within. Forget, no gurus, forget them. This is not what you're looking for. No intelligence drops, go within. And that's why I think this anxiety work that I do with people, and what many other people do with people as well, is so important, because it's like, though people who are really struggling with anxiety can't do that, they can't go within, they don't have that internal frame of reference, they're always looking outside. I need reassurance, I need confirmation, I need some more certainty, I need some more guidance. So I think that in a way, although my work, you could say it's kind of a bit mundane compared to, I mean, I watched you on with Farah. I only saw it yesterday because my internet's been down for weeks. Bloody, it's been a pain. But I watched it last night. That one you did for Farah, it was great. And even though that my work seems a bit mundane compared to what Farah does, and I know Farah's work because she's done some amazing work with me and my daughter. I absolutely love that girl. Actually, I feel that what I do is as valid, as valuable, because it's sort of the level before that, you know, and people who are massively anxious might struggle to access the others. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
There's something about
there's all levels to come into this, because everybody on earth is suffering with this to some degree. The access point is different for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you've written a free PDF on this subject. What have you called that?
Yeah, it's called 6 Swift Shifts, and it's all about.
Try saying that when you've had a bottle of wine.
Well, that's why I gave up. You see, I just couldn't do it. So I had to go. It's the wine or the PDF.
Shifts. It sounds like one of those exercises actors do in rehearsals. 6 Swift Shifts. Try saying it faster and faster until you red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so I know that you are passionate about helping as many people out in this time. So this is like an easily digestible. This is your what you think is the quickest way to, like, a reference guide to help people, right?
Yeah, there'll be one of those shifts on there will be what will help you to, in that moment of anxiety, in that moment of panic, to bring it down. And they range from tiny little interventions, which are sort of sense-based, just practice a breathing exercise. Most people know about breathing exercises, but I'm hoping that people will realize that breathing is in the context of communicating with your body, telling your body that you are safe and resetting your body. It's not just something to do because someone told you it would be a good thing to do. So there's breathing exercises on there, and then there's even the slightly more radical exercises on there, like when you dip your face, you sort of dive into a big bucket of cold water, which instantly brings down the...
I like the sound of that. That's the kind of thing I'd enjoy doing.
Yeah, well, so you don't have to worry about your mascara, so go for that one.
What do you mean? I got loads on.
It came off in the bucket, Mark, when you were doing your exercise. No, it's a great little exercise. It's chilly water. You get your face in there, and it's called the mammalian dive reflex. So it basically, for whatever reason, calms the vagus nerve. And there's a lot of work being done at the moment around the vagus nerve.
Well, I did a Wim Hof course a couple of years ago. Thank God I did.
Oh wow! How did you like it? Was it good?
I loved it. You know, I didn't think I could possibly sit in a bath of ice, but I did.
Wow.
Still
That's
very
on my must-do list.
No, it's really good. Yeah, everybody should do it. I'm still very shy of having a cold shower, because if I've got a choice between the hot and the cold, I'm like, cold, no.
It sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Yeah, but yeah. I learned a lot from it. It was good. I'm glad I did it. It helped prepare me for this time, actually, because it was just before this happened.
Yeah. Fantastic. Following your intuition. And that's the thing, you see, you started off this conversation by talking about all the loosh that is being generated on purpose. And, you know, we are being turned into batteries. Sod them, screw them, and let's get our equilibrium back.
Absolutely.
Don't be in that anxious place. I mean, I'm so stubborn and pig-headed. I won't be there just to spite them. Not happening.
Yeah, I'm indignant with them. So that's why I talk about this sort of thing. That's why I want to get people like you on the show, because it's like, the more that we do to stop feeding them, to stop consenting to their bullshit, then the quicker we're going to win.
I know. And that makes me feel really good just to think on that. It's just fantastic. So yeah, I love doing the work that I do, and it's a funny time to be doing it in, and it's a lot of personal triggers, as we all know. But I think if people get hold of my free PDF, they might find it nice, and if nothing, it looks pretty. It's very well designed, and it's got 6 nice little exercises on there to help people just to tune back in. Because
I'll put a link near the video. But are you how are you feeling about the future? Let's talk about that for a bit.
I have felt good about the future in a kind of a really in the back of my head kind of way for a long time. I don't think I came here right now to see everything go to shit. I've got a very strong sense that I came here to to see something amazing and to participate in something amazing. And I tell you, I absolutely love your poem and I love your video. And I just want to say to the person who said that you're being egotistical, get over this. That was I literally laugh out loud when I hear things like that. It's crazy, isn't it? But no, I loved it. I thought, I heard you say to someone, I can't remember who, that it was channeled and it was a message that was beyond you. And it's so clear to me that message. And we all need to hear that. I love it. And I'm so glad when Bryce it was, I think, said she was going to put it on her channel because.
Who did?
Yeah, the more people hear that, the better.
Yeah.
So I feel very positive.
Yeah, I often wonder why, but you just got to do it. When it comes, it comes. And the how that video was made was amazing because there's this amazing cinematographer called Luke who'd been trying to contact me for a year, and I was like, yeah, I'm too busy. So, everybody that tried to contact me in the last 2 years, I didn't get back to. Believe me, I did my best. And then eventually spoke to him, and then suddenly this editor appeared. Suddenly this amazing composer appeared out of nowhere and agreed to do it. And before you knew it, and I was like, wow, it was a beautiful experience actually. But yeah. The feedback's it's amazing what a little poem can do,
isn't it? But that you're really feeling that poem, and it comes over so beautifully. It's wow. It's one of the best things I've seen in 2 years in terms of its sort of impact. It's very impactful.
Wow.
It's not the word.
That's very kind of you to say. And my wish is only that it just lets those people that have been through this alone realize that we're all part of this, and we're all important, and we're all doing this together, whether we realize it or not. And all the crap that you've been through, I think there's a big reward coming for all the good people in the world.
I think so too. I feel like everything's going to fall away, all the bullshit and the BS. And, like I said, my older daughter she's coming up 26 this summer. And I remember when she was 3 or 4 watching sort of Saturday morning TV and seeing, I didn't have TV on for her for the first sort of 3 years. So maybe she was a bit older. And seeing these women in their spangly boob tubes on Saturday morning. And I was just thinking, what kind of a world is this? Yep. This is not feeding the children. I'm not feeling this. So it was subtle back then, in 2000 or whenever. It ain't subtle anymore.
No.
And I love that in a way. It's hard and it's horrible, but I love it.
Well, yeah. Yeah. It's I'm out of words. It's just like.
Did I do it? Have I put Mark Attwood out of words? Do I win a prize?
Well, it happened then because I had 16 thoughts at the same time, and I was like, "Which one am I going to go with?" And then I was like, "No, there's a reason not for that." And anyway, self-editing. I don't need to edit at all because I'm not on YouTube.
Exactly. Pick a thought, go with it.
Well, look, I'm glad you're. I really appreciate you sharing that, and you guys watching. Manda's really good at this stuff. If you know anybody with anxiety, just share that link with them and get onto that, because anything on the road to recovery is a good thing. And I encourage people like Manda to get their information out there in the world, and I hope that's helped, and I hope watching this has helped people who are watching it. And can people? I don't suppose you do private stuff, do you? Can people get hold of you if they want a session with you or anything like that?
At the moment, I can't do any. I'm absolutely fully booked, but I will be opening up in the future. So if anyone contacts me through the YouTube channel, you'll have all the links, and it's on the linktree anyway. Then I'll let them know. So if anyone's interested to do that, I'll let them know when I'm available, because it will happen in the future. And I've got a book out as well, which is called The Panic Button Pause, which I'm very proud of. I think is an extremely helpful book. It brings together my basic philosophy on helping with panic, and it's quite contemporaneous. Is that the word? It just fits with. It's the right book for now. I mean, I know there's probably been 10 million books about panic written in the past, and probably 10 million in the future, but I think this one's right for now. So that's available as well. That's just been published as an audio book too, for those who prefer to listen. But the free offering that I have is about 6 swift shifts, which I think is very helpful.
I know you put a lot of work into those, and it is, adapting to this this new level of anxiety that we're in is key for survival of all of us, I think.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Right. Well, I'm off to prepare the dinner for the children. So I'll thanks a lot for sharing your time with us today and your knowledge. And I'll see you soon.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Manda.
Bye.